Part 21. Declaration of Prophethood. 3 years after the initial revelation of Reed, Allah revealed a number of verses commanding the Prophet to preach publicly. 2 of those revelations were especially pivotal in taking the message public. The first was Surah Al-Hijr.
So proclaim what you have been commanded, and turn away from the polytheists. Surah 15, verse 94.
The other explicit verse is in Surah Al-Shu'ara.
And warn your closest relatives. Surah 26, verse 214.
The verse was not limited to the Prophet's close relatives. The command extended to all of the Quraysh, but with particular emphasis on those closest. First, the Prophet went to his immediate tribe, the Banu Hashim, which included his immediate uncles and aunts. He instructed Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was a young boy at the time, to prepare some food. He invited around 40 of his relatives and tribesmen. It was a blessed broth, as it was reported that everyone ate from one plate, yet ate until their fill. Abu Lahab, who had already heard the rumors, suspected that the Prophet may make an announcement and declare publicly what he had been preaching privately. He then strategically excused himself, citing some business he needed to take care of. A number of other tribesmen followed suit and left. The Prophet recognized this tactic and organized a similar gathering a few days later. This time he made the announcement before anyone could leave. The Prophet stood up and began by praising Allah. He gave the Khutbah al-Hajjah, now recited in most Friday sermons around the world, though it was not known to the Quraysh at the time. It is as follows. All praise is due to Allah. I praise Him and seek His help. I believe in Him and rely upon Him alone. I testify that there is no God but Allah alone, without any partners. The Prophet then continued, O Banu Abdul Muttalib, I do not know of any Arab before me who has come to his people with a message that is better than that which I am coming to you with. He then continued to preach his prophethood. This was the first time that the prophethood was publicly announced in such a manner. Abu Lahab grew irritated and stood up, remarking to those around him,
O Banu Abdul Muttalib, by Allah this call is reprehensible, so obstruct him before others do so. If you don't, you'll either accept Islam, which will be your disgrace, or you'll later oppose him and be killed.
The other relatives were not as harsh, though they did not take the message that seriously. A short time later, the Prophet announced his prophethood publicly to the whole city. He climbed Mount Safa, which is now much smaller than it was due to erosion. A man would only climb Mount Safa in such a manner if he had an elaborate announcement. The Prophet exclaimed, O Sabaha, an exclamation specifically used to gather people's attention in sudden and dramatic fashion. He then called out to each tribe, O Banu Fihr, O Banu Adi, and so on. People began to gather in throngs, and those who could not attend sent a representative in their place, until the Prophet asked, If I told you that horsemen were advancing to attack you from the valley on the other side of this mountain, would you believe me? They replied, Yes, of course, we have never known you to lie. The Prophet then said, Then know that I am a warner of an impending severe punishment. He then called them to Islam and to the worship of Allah alone. He continued to call them, starting from the furthest tribe from him and working inwards, O Banu Ka'b ibn Lu'ay, save yourselves from the fire of hell, for I will not be able to help you on the day of judgment. O Banu Murrah ibn Ka'b, save yourselves from the fire of hell. O Banu Abd Manaf, and so on. When he arrived at Banu Hashim, he began naming his family members one by one. O Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, O Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib, aunt of the Prophet, O Fatima bint Muhammad, and after each name was said, the same sentence was uttered. Save yourselves from the fire of hell, for I will not be able to help you on the day of judgment. Abu Lahab stood up, picked up some sand, and threw it in the direction of the Prophet in a display of disgust, saying,
May your hands perish! Is this the reason you have gathered us here today?
Allah revealed the verses in response.
May the hands of Abu Lahab perish, and may he himself perish. Neither his wealth nor his worldly gains will benefit him. He will burn in a flaming fire, and so will his wife, the carrier of thorny kindling. Around her neck will be a rope of palm fire. Surah 111 verses 1 to 5.
It is reported that the wife of Abu Lahab wore a valuable necklace and would say,
By Al-La'at and Al-Uzza, I will sell this necklace and spend the money to satisfy my enmity against Muhammad.
Allah therefore promised her a necklace in the hellfire. Proving his own demise, Abu Lahab would indeed go on to display the most animosity and cruelty to the Prophet and his companions. The Prophet's methodology in calling out the tribes in order of closeness to him is particularly striking. It clearly outlines how each person is responsible first and foremost to their immediate family, followed by society at large. Indeed, Allah revealed,
And warn your closest relatives. Surah 26 verse 214.
The Prophet first called Banu Hashim, then he made a public call to the people of Mecca, and a few years later he extended his call to the whole of humanity. After this event, the Prophet began preaching publicly throughout Mecca. He would preach at the Kaaba, at public venues, and at the marketplace. He would even wait outside Mecca for pilgrims of Hajj to preach to them too. The Prophet's dawah became public, and opposition inevitably began.